Hi, hello, and welcome to class. It's good to have you again. Welcome to English language class. Welcome. Okay, today we are going to continue from where we stopped the last class, and we've been looking at sentence completion and interpretation, and we are still going to continue with that today. So for the last class, we started with grammar rules for sentence completion. Grammar rules for sentence completion. And I was saying that there are grammar rules. And when you're talking about sentence completion, we already are familiar with that filling the gap. Okay, the filling the gap sentence that we've been used to since our primary school days. Yes, all right. So when we talk about sentence completion, that's what we are referring to. It means there is basically a sentence, but there is a word or there is a phrase that is missing in that sentence, and you're expected to complete that sentence. So your knowledge on how to complete that sentence with the right or the appropriate word or the appropriate phrase is what is being tested on this sentence completion in the examination. All right, so we have been looking at grammar rules for sentence completion, and I mentioned that there are grammar rules that you need to follow for you not to make mistakes while filling in the gap. All right, so we started with five of the grammar rules in the last class, and the five things I mentioned, or the five rules that I mentioned. Number one, we talked about subject verb agreement. Subject verb agreement. Number two, we talked about tense consistency. Number three, we have the proper use of article, a, and the. All right. Then number four, we talk about parallel structure. And number five, we talked about the use of conjunction. All right. So today we're going to continue. We still have more grammar rules. We're still going to look at about two or three of them today to the five that we already have. Right? There are five grammar rules for sentence completion on ground. So today we're going to be looking at two or three of them to add to the five. So we should have like seven, or we should have like eight grammar rules at the end of today. Then we continue or finish up the class in the next class. All right. So to our board now. All right. We are looking at grammar rules for sentence completion. Grammar rules for sentence completion. All right. Okay, so the next point we're going to be looking at, is um, pronoun agreement. Pronoun agreement. All right. Please, I do not want us to forget where we are coming from and why we are doing all of this. Right. So, like I mentioned earlier, when you're talking about sentence completion, we're talking about filling in the gap. But for you to fill in the gap with the most appropriate option, you need to understand some grammar rules, and that's what we are looking at. So, make sure you pay attention to all the grammar rules because they're going to help you a lot while choosing your answers in the examination. All right. So, we're looking at pronoun agreement. Pronoun agreement. All right. So when we talk about pronoun agreement, what does this rule says? Okay. So the rule says a pronoun must agree in number. All right. The pronoun must agree in number. So in number, we talk about singular and plural. And we briefly mentioned that in the last class too. Okay, so a pronoun must agree in number, that is in singular and plural, and also in gender. When you talk about gender, you're talking about male, female, or neutral. Okay, with its antecedent, that is the noun that it's going to replace. All right. So we are familiar with the fact that a pronoun is used to replace a noun. So we should not forget that pronouns replaces, or a pronoun replaces a noun. Okay. Replaces a noun. Okay. So when we are talking about pronoun agreement, we want to talk about numbers, or we talk about number in terms of being singular, or being plural. And we also want to talk about gender, that's male or female, or we want to talk about neutral. All right. So it says a pronoun must agree in number. So pronoun must agree in number and in gender to its antecedent. Okay, so when we talk about antecedent, we are talking about the noun it replaces. Okay, so it means if a pronoun is replacing a noun, it must agree with that noun. It must agree with that noun. So the fact whether we are talking about number or we are talking about gender, they must agree. All right, we are going to be looking at an example so that we understand this better. All right, so the simple part that we can talk about, we can say Mary forgot a bag. Mary forgot a bag. All right. We're talking about pronoun agreement here. Now we have a noun here, and we know that nouns are names. All right. So this is a name for someone, this is a name of somebody. All right. So here is our noun. Now it has to agree with the pronoun. Here is the pronoun. All right. So the pronoun here replaces the word Mary. So instead of us to have Mary forgot Mary's bag, we have Mary forgot a bag. And that's the work of pronoun, to replace noun and to help us reduce how we repeat nouns. All right. So it's proper to just have the pronoun here. So we have Mary forgot a bag. Now we're talking about this pronoun replacing this noun, but then the pronoun is agreeing with the noun. All right, the pronoun is agreeing with the noun. How? In number and in gender. All right, so if you're asking me how do we mean by in number, how does he agree with it in number and in gender? We talked about Mary, and Mary is the name of a person. Mary is one person, so we have one person. That means if you're using a pronoun to replace the word, the noun that we have, it means that pronoun must agree with the fact that the person is singular. So instead of saying Mary forgot their bag, all right, their already, when we talk about their is already showing plural. And that's not what we are looking at, because Mary is singular. Mary is just one person. So if Mary is one person, then the pronoun that you're using to replace Mary should be singular. All right. So we have R. And when we talk about gender, Mary is female. All right, that's why I didn't use a unisex name, so that we don't get confused, because there's some unisex name that could get us confused. There's some of our tribe names. Okay, so you could hear someone answering the name Tola, and you don't know if the person is male or female. All right. If you hear names like Toby, you don't know if the person is male or female, or even some English names. The one we call English names. We talk about peace. You hear the word peace or you hear the name peace, you're wondering, okay, is this person supposed to be a male or is it supposed to be a female? I didn't use a unisex name. I'm talking about the fact that this name is distinct and we can all tell that this is female. So for female, the pronoun for female is are. You're not using is for male. So in this case, we have Mary forgot her bag. All right. Mary, the noun, and are, the pronoun, agreeing. So the pronoun is in agreement with the noun, both in number and in gender. That is what we mean by pronoun agreement. So you would have sentences in your examination, you're asked to complete it, and you're asked to complete it with the pronoun. You have the noun already, and you're supposed to replace the noun with a pronoun. You should know that your pronoun should agree both in gender and both in number, all right? With with the noun that you're supposed to replace it with. All right. Now, there's usually a confusion that we're going to look at before we look at the next point. All right. I'm going to wipe this up so that we look at, we take one example to explain that point. All right. Now, there's some cases where we have, or where the pronoun, or when we talk about pronoun agreement, of course, we usually match the pronoun in number. Okay. So, but there are some cases where the word there, let's have that written, the word there is commonly used even for one person. I used an example the other time when I was talking about are, and I was like, okay, for Mary, we know that Mary is a singular person. And when you talk about are, it means you're referring to someone singular. But there's some cases where you use the word there even for a singular person. All right, there's an exception to that. And when we talk about that exception, I'm going to give us some points where or on how we can understand when and where to use that exception. All right. Okay, so when we talk about there, you can use there in some of those situations. Number one, when the subject is unclear, when the subject is unclear, or when the gender is neutral. Did you get that? So when subject is unclear, or when the gender is neutral, you can use there. So instead of using are or is, you use there. All right. So we can have an example like um, someone someone left their phone on the table. Someone left their phone on the table. Please, if you can hear me clearly, please drop a thumbs up so I know that you are with me. Drop a thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. All right, good. All right, so someone left their phone. Thank you. Someone left their phone on the table. Now, in this case, the subject is not clear and even the gender is neutral. Someone could be anybody. Someone could be a boy, someone could be a girl, someone could be a man, someone could be a woman. We know that we know of the phone. We know that there is a phone on the table, and of course, it belongs to someone. And someone is who we do not know. So, in that case, you can use there as the pronoun to replace this someone. All right. You use there as the pronoun to replace this someone, and you would be right. You would be very right. So someone left their phone on the table. Now, someone may be asking me, Can we say someone left his or her phone on the table? Let me have that written. Someone left his or her phone on the table. All right, this sentence, sentence two, is not grammatically wrong. There is nothing wrong with this sentence. You can use this sentence. However, if you find a sentence like someone left his phone on the table, then we can rule this out. Because someone is a subject and the subject is unclear and we do not know the gender. So we can say this is genderless. All right, so the gender is neutral. If the gender is neutral, why are you using is as the pronoun to replace a subject that is unclear? So if you say someone left his or her phone on the table, this is grammatically right, but it is better you say someone left their phone on the table. Like I mentioned, you can use there for a singular subject if the subject is unclear and if the gender is neutral. So in your examination, if you find in your sentence completion question, you find a question like someone left dash phone on the table, someone left dash phone on the table, and you find option A as is, option B as are, option C as there, option D as is or are, it's better you go for this. This is more appropriate. This is not wrong, but because this is here, because option C is here, it's better you go for option C because the subject is unclear and the gender is neutral. But if you do not have this option there, maybe option D here, we have C, and maybe option D, you have it, you can go for this. All right. So if you have option A as is, option B as are, option C as is or are, option D as it, it's better you go for this. But once you find there in your option, there is the most appropriate option to use to replace the subject that is unclear and the subject that is neutral. So it is right and proper to say someone left their phone on the table. All right. So the next point on how, on when and where to use there, okay, when and when to use there is when referring to a singular indefinite pronoun. When referring to a singular indefinite pronoun, I'm going to have the board wiped off so I can have the other option. All right. So when referring to a singular indefinite pronoun, when referring to a singular indefinite pronoun. Okay, so when you talk about referring to singular indefinite pronouns, just like we mentioned in the first point, you have something like someone, like everyone, like anyone. All right, so all of these we know are singular and they are indefinite. Okay, they are singular and indefinite. So it's going to be incorrect to say everyone should submit his assignment by Friday, or everyone should submit our assignment by Friday. You know that's not correct. Okay, you can say, just like I mentioned in point one, everyone should submit his or her assignment by Friday. But the most appropriate is to say everyone or everyone should submit their assignment by Friday, because this is indefinite, it is singular, but we do not know where to place this in terms of gender for you to use is or are. You use is for male and you use are for female. So when there is no gender, right? When there's no gender, it's wrong for you to use is because you don't know the gender, and it's wrong for you to use are when you don't know the gender. You can use is or are because you don't know the gender, but the most appropriate thing is to use their. So you can say everyone should submit their assignment by Friday. All right. So since these are singular, and for singular you can say the pronoun there does not go with it. It doesn't go with it, but there are some exceptions, and those exceptions are what we are looking at. All right. The third point where you exempted to use this is when referring to a generalized person. When referring to a generalized person. Okay, so when referring to a generalized person. Okay. All right. When referring to a generalized person, what do we mean by generalized? Okay. So it means when we are talking generally about a person without being specific, generally. So, for instance, um, we can say, or we can use the example, a good doctor listens to dash patients. All right. So do we fill this in with is or with are? You don't know, because the word doctor here has been generalized. A doctor could be a male and it could be a female. So it means you're referring to a generalized person. If you say a good doctor listens to his patients, then it means you've removed the option of female doctors. It means you're referring only to male doctors. But in this case, you're referring to all doctors, whichever one, whether you are male or female. Once you're a good doctor, you're expected to listen to your patients. So because this doesn't have gender and is generalized, has been generalized, you use there for the option. So is not your option. All right. Someone says they can't see the board clearly. Can you see it now? All right. Okay, so there, you use there because the person is generalized, and the generalized subject does not, we do not know the gender. So you're permitted to use there. All right. Again, I'll run over the 3 points that I mentioned so you know when to use there. You use there for a singular subject when the subject is unclear, or there is a gender, when the gender is neutral. When the subject is unclear or when the gender is neutral. Then number two, you use there for a singular person when referring to a singular indefinite pronoun. When referring to a singular indefinite pronoun. And then thirdly, you use there when referring to a generalized person. You use there when referring to a generalized person. All right. So we move to our next point, point number 7 under the grammar rules. The point we just finished looking at is pronoun agreement. Pronoun agreement, and we're talking about a pronoun must agree with the noun it's replacing. And we gave some exceptions where the pronoun may not agree. That's where we mentioned those 3 points. All right. So the 7th point we are looking at for grammar rules, okay, grammar rules for sentence completion is the use of preposition. The use of preposition. I'm going to be wiping off the board. Okay, so we have the use of preposition. Okay, so when we talk about preposition, we know that a preposition must match the correct verb or the noun. Preposition must match the correct verb or the noun found in the sentence. So when you use the wrong preposition, it could change the meaning of a sentence, or it could actually make it grammatically incorrect. There are sometimes when you do not use the right preposition, the sentence may be grammatically incorrect. In a case where the sentence is still grammatically correct, it could change the meaning of that sentence. All right, so let's look at this example. Um, she is good in mathematics. All right, she's good in mathematics. This is a sentence. Now, something is wrong with this sentence. Something is wrong with this sentence. We have used the wrong preposition. Okay, we have used the wrong preposition in this sentence, and the wrong preposition we used is in. You don't say she is good in mathematics. Now, because you used the wrong preposition, of course, this sentence is grammatically incorrect. Grammatically incorrect. All right. So what you say is she is good at mathematics. Okay. So she is good at mathematics. All right. So that makes it right because you have used the correct preposition. All right. When you talk about correct preposition, after the word good, especially when you're talking about a skill, okay, we use the word good, and we're talking about a skill here. The preposition that should follow is at. So she is good at something. We are referring to a skill and we are using the word good. So in a sentence, if you're referring to a skill and you're using the word good, what should follow is at. So it's not she's good in mathematics, but she is good at mathematics. So, like I mentioned, the use of preposition is very important in your sentence completion. If you use the wrong preposition, you could change the meaning of that word, you could change the meaning of that sentence, or you could make the sentence grammatically incorrect. And that's not what we are trying to do. All right. So, she's good at mathematics, not she's good in mathematics, and you have some other ones like that too. Okay, we are going to the next point. That's the correct use of modals. The correct use of modals. That's point number 8, grammatical rules. The use or the correct use of modals. Correct use of modals. Now, modals itself, it's a big topic on its own. It's a topic on its own. And we're going to start by looking at what they are and how they function so that when we meet with them or when we come across them, we know what to do with them. So we are focusing on modals for this point. All right. We are focusing on modals for this point. Now, when you talk about modals, you can see modals as your helping verbs. They are special verbs. They are verbs, not like the normal verbs that we know, because of course when we mention verb, we are thinking of action words, we are thinking of kill, you are thinking of eat, you are thinking of sleep, etc. These are words we know as the normal verb. But there's some other verbs that we call modal, okay? Modal verbs, all right? This is where you can find can, you can find could, you can find will, you can find would, etc. So these are modals, and you need to understand the correct usage of these modals for you to be correct with your sentences. Okay, so like I mentioned, when you see modals, think of them as helping words, helping words. Okay, so they are your verbs, or they are that word that help give verb its meaning, it give it more meaning. All right, so when you have an example like she can eat, she can eat, all right, without this you have she eats, and you know that this is grammatically incorrect when you say she eats, because normally, even if you're going to have a very simple short sentence, it would be grammatically right if you say she eats, she eats. But because there is can, you don't need to put this s, so you have she can eat, she can eat. Now we're going to be looking at these models and how they function. All right, so let's start with can and could. Can and could, usually they show ability or possibility. They show ability or possibility. Okay. When you look at will and would, um, they talk about the future. Okay. They talk about the future. They talk about politeness. Okay. When you talk about may and might, okay, so for will and would, you talk about future, you talk about politeness, and then hypothetical. Hypothetical, all right? So for may and might, they talk about possibility, okay? They talk about permission, okay? And then when you talk about should, you talk about advice, you talk about obligation, you talk about advice, you talk about obligation. All right. So these are the major ones we're focusing on. Okay. So when you talk about can is used for present or general ability. For present and general ability. I gave an example. I said she can eat. That's showing ability, showing what she can do. Okay. So when you talk about can, you're talking about present ability, present or general ability. That's when you use can. Okay. Then for could is used to show past ability or polite request. Past ability or polite request. All right. For example, I'm going to be giving one example each for both can and for could. All right. For can, I already mentioned she can eat, but we can still have an example like she can swim. She can swim. All right. Can here is helping us reveal the ability of this lady, showing us what she can do. So she can swim. So it's talking about a present. We're not talking about the past now. We're talking about a present ability of this young lady. So she can swim, the ability of this lady. All right. Now, for could, you could use an example to say, when I was a child, I could run very fast. Right? When I was a child, I could run very fast. All right, we're using could here, could. But this is showing past ability, what you could do in the past. That means that when I was a child is not referring to my present, okay? It's not referring to my present, it's referring to my past. So this sentence implies that, okay, as I am grown now, I can't run as fast as I used to when I was a child. So this is showing past ability. So you use can to show present ability or general ability, while you use could to show past ability. Okay? You use past to show You use could to show past ability. Okay. Could also be used for polite request. Polite request. Okay. You could have an example like, could you help me with my work? Could you help me with my work? All right. This is making a request, but in a polite way. This is you asking nicely. All right. It won't be very proper for you to say, can you help me with my work? When you say, can you help me with my work, it is not wrong, but it's not really showing politeness. Okay. It's less polite than, could you help me with my work? So, could you help me with my work? Could in this sentence is showing politeness. So, for can, you use can for present ability, to show present ability or general ability. You use could to show past ability or to show polite request. Okay, so when you come across this in your question and you're expected to fill in your options, you meet with can, you meet with could. If it says, dash you help me with my work, the most polite and the most appropriate you should choose is could. Okay, because it's showing politeness. So again, can shows ability. All right, it shows present ability, while could shows past ability, and it also shows polite request. Okay, that's for can. Let's move to the next point. I'm going to have to wipe off the board now. If you can hear me and you are still with me, kindly drop a thumbs up. All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we are looking at will. Thank you. We are looking at will and would. Will and would. Thank you. All right. We are looking at will and would. Okay, so will and would, of course, I mentioned that they show future, they show politeness, and they show hypothetical. All right, so for will is used for the future. Okay, will is used for the future. So you can have an example. Okay, will is used for the future or to show the future. So you can have an example like, I will call you tomorrow, or I will do something next week. Now, when we talk about future, we are not talking about 10 years from now. Future means any moment from now. When you talk about future in English language, you're talking about any moment from now. So when you hear the word future, don't be thinking 20 years or 50 years from now. We are talking about any moment from now. So it means any minute from now could be our future. So if I say I will go home soon or I will end the class soon, I'm still talking about the future. It means I'm not talking about the past and I'm not talking about the present. I hope we get that. So future does not mean something that is very far away, but something that is not of the present and not of the past. So I will call you tomorrow is showing future. All right. I will do something next week showing future. You can't say I will call you yesterday. You can't say I will call you yesterday. So will here is used to show future. And then would is used for polite speech or imaginary situation. Okay, used for polite speech or imaginary situation. Okay, so for polite speech, you could have um would you like some coffee? Okay, would you like some coffee? All right. So this is used to show us a polite speech. Okay, you're asking someone if they want something, but you're asking it in a polite way. Would you like some coffee? All right. So to show polite or for polite speech. All right. So the when you talk about imaginary situations, you can say, I would love to visit Korea someday. Okay, I would love to visit Korea someday. Maybe there's some people that have this nice imagination with me. Of course, I'm not planning to go to Korea now, but then I would love to visit Korea someday. Now, in my head, I have visited Korea, and there's a reason why I would love to visit Korea. Okay, so that's like an like you imagine it. Okay, so it's in your head and you're using would to communicate what you are actually talking about. So it's an imaginary situation for you, so you use would to talk about imaginary situation. Okay, so we have looked at two parts of the modals today. We have looked at the can and the could, and we have looked at will and would. Okay, so we're going to be ending it here today. We're going to continue the other ones for the next class. We still have may, might, we have should. All right, so we're going to be looking at those two for our next class before we continue. So this is where we'll stop today. Before we look at a question, a general question, let's quickly do a brief review of what we have done today. Okay, so we continued our sentence completion and interpretation class. All right, and we started looking at the rules, grammar rules for sentence completion. So we started from number 6 today. We did number 1 to 5 in the last class. Today we started with number 6 and we mentioned pronoun agreement. All right, this is where I said for your pronoun agreement, your pronoun must agree with the noun. In when you talk about a number, that's for singular and plural, and then you talk about gender for male and for female. All right, and that there are exceptions to this pronoun agreement. For instance, we know that the word there, their, is used for plural subject, but there are cases when you can use it for singular subject. So these are the exceptions. And that's number one, when the subject is unclear or we have a neutral gender. Number two, when referring to a singular indefinite pronoun. And number three, when referring to a generalized person. All right. Then we looked at point number seven for the grammar rules. That's the use of prepositions, the use of prepositions. And then we mentioned that a preposition must match the correct verb or noun. So if you use the wrong preposition, it could change the meaning of that sentence or it could make that sentence grammatically incorrect. Then number eight, that's rule number eight, that's the correct use of modals, the correct use of modals. And we have been able to look at the two aspects, that's can versus could, will versus would. But we've looked at four because can is different from could, and then we have will, which is also different from would. So we have looked at these four modals, can, and we talked about can to show present or general ability. Can shows present or general ability, while could shows past ability or polite request. Past ability or polite request. Then we looked at will and would, and we said will is used for the future. And I mentioned that the future doesn't mean something far away. It's not, we are not talking about a far away moment. We are talking about something or a moment that is not of the past nor the present. So when you talk about future, you're talking about something that is not of the present or the past. And also we said would, we looked at would as a modal, which is also used for polite speech or imaginary situation. Okay, so if you have any question, please drop your question in the chat box as we take this question from 2016. 2016. Okay, UTME 2016. Please, if you have questions, kindly drop them. All right. So this question is from 2016 UTME under your sentence completion. All right. Okay. Okay, we are majorly looking at completing the sentence. All right. So we have Bola takes dash his father both in appearance and his manner. And we have four options. We have four options. And then from these grammar rules that we have looked at, we can see that our options here are mainly prepositions. So it means the we are looking at the use of preposition. So, and remember I mentioned that when you use a preposition wrongly, you could alter the meaning of that sentence or you could make the sentence grammatically incorrect. All right. So we're going to be looking at the option to see which one is most appropriate. Now, option one says on. So Bola takes dash his father both in appearance and his manner. Okay, so we have Bola takes on. If you say takes on, the meaning of take on means to accept a responsibility or a challenge. To accept a responsibility or a challenge. And that doesn't fit in for this. Option two, take from means to remove from something, okay, which doesn't also fit. All right. So when you say take after, to take after means to resemble someone in appearance. To take upon means to assume responsibility, which also doesn't match. So which matches? The one that matches is actually takes after, because that means to resemble. So we are looking at take after. All right. So Bola takes after his father, both in appearance. We're talking about Bola resembling his father. But as you can see that these wrong options actually altered the meaning, because the meaning of take on, take from, and take upon are different from take after. And if you use these options apart from C, it means you would be changing the meaning of this sentence. That's what we mean by the use of correct preposition. So sometimes when you use an incorrect preposition, it doesn't mean that the sentence is going to be wrong. It only means that the sentence is going to change meaning, which is not what we are looking for. So for this option, we find after as the most appropriate option for this question. So we're going to be ending the class for today, and I'm going to see you on Friday as we continue on our correct use of modals. All right. So if you miss any part of the class today, kindly go on our YouTube channel at A1 Tutor to see what part you have missed and to revise on what we have done today. All right. See you in the next class. Bye bye.